There is a loss of jobs in South Africa. In fact, from load shedding to job shedding.
I must call a pastor to take you out now.
German card.
You must make sure that you are one of the people who are going to deliver victory day in our lifetime.
Sayithatha lento adverts.
Asinachoice phofu funeka
Yeah.
siyithathe. And all students are agreeing, of course.
Yeah.
And I think it would be an amazing moment also for the EFF adverts to get a second term. So
Yeah.
we have to take it. We have no choice.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm a student ready to thatha lento. Ayinabungozi.
I never go.
Yeah. Let's get the ball rolling. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in. This is the EFF Podcast, and welcome to this week's installment of the episode of the EFF Podcast. My name is Titus and today I'm super excited to be joined by the young and fresh intelligentsia from the University of Witwatersrand. Thank you very much for coming through.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bukisa, what are the preparations? Are you ready for the elections? I understand they are built for the 17th and the 18th of September.
Yes, our elections are happening on the 17th and 18th. And of course, I think your preparation for your election is, of course, engaging with students, doing your groundwork, the door-to-door, motomotong. Those are things that are very important because those are the people that are going to vote for you. That's your constituency. And we've been doing this throughout the year. So we don't act as if election season comes along and we're like, oh, Ganene, the students. You need to always be engaging your students. You need to have programs that speaks to the needs of students. And I think that's how SRCs can maintain power, to ensure that you speak to your constituency and you have programs that speak to those constituencies.
Yeah.
So throughout our term, we've actually tried to address most issues that VIT students had raised to us during our campaign season last year. And the biggest one of those was, of course, self-funded students not being able to register at the beginning of the year. NSFAS students couldn't register as well because of the NSFAS cap, of course. So doing things that then speak to students, so ensuring that students, regardless of how much they owe, are able to register, assisting students by at least trying to pay for some of their fees. So collectively, with my SRC, we try to raise about 10 million. So that's the amount we raised.
Wow.
For students that don't necessarily have funding, and that means that they owe.
Yeah.
And we paid per students up to 75,000.
Is that through the SRC fund?
Yes, that's our fund that we fundraise for and allocated funds to students.
Yeah.
So it's those things. And also, we embarked on a very aggressive campaign against academic exclusions with the academic officer. And I think students adverts can tell that there was a change in government, and we were very intentional in our actions, and we were very aggressive in any type of campaign we pursued. So going into these elections, I think we prepared. And of course, when you engage students and you ask them, oh, how did you find the SRC? Majority of them are happy with the SRC. And of course, there's some people that would have disgruntlements in any type of governance, of course. And it's just about convincing those people that, look, this is how much we've done within a year.
Yeah.
Imagine if we'd get a second term.
Yeah.
So the ground is definitely fertile, and we're definitely taking this.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And what is trending now is this hashtag Thatha
Thathalento
lento
in
mfundi.
Abunisi.
How did you put this together, and how is it resonating with the ground forces on the ground?
Yes, we live in the age of TikTok, and,
Sure.
that came from a TikTok sound. And that's the other thing I just like about young people in South Africa, and especially the EFF. The EFF can connect what young people like and make it political, right? And that's why it resonates with young people, because they know that sound from TikTok. And the fact that we were able to connect it and make it our campaign is such a beautiful thing, because it shows that we're actually in touch with the ground, and we know our constituency.
And President, you are leading one of the most prestigious universities in South Africa with a rich history. I mean, if we look back to 2015, that's where the Fees Must Fall campaign began. But now when we look at the current challenges, what are some of the challenges that you're grappling with, and what are you seeking to achieve as an outgoing president?
I think the challenges that I think challenges that are faced by VIT students aren't necessarily just faced by VIT students. It's something that's faced across the country. So issues with NSFAS, issues with financial exclusion, academic exclusion are things that happen across the country. And I think as the outgoing president, I think what I would want to impart to the incoming SRC that's EFF led is that most of the issues that are faced in higher education are sectoral issues, right?
Yeah.
And this means that we have a common enemy throughout all institutions, and our enemy is the Department of Higher Education, and our enemy is the GNU, because they simply fail to deliver what students need and what we deserve effectively. So that's free decolonized education. And what you're seeing over the years is that there's always some form of drawback from the wins that the Fees Must Fall generation won. So for instance, if you look at NSFAS and like the framework of NSFAS, NSFAS after Fees Must Fall was said to be a bursary, was said to be the free education that comrades fought for. But when you look now, students have to top up. Students don't necessarily get enough money to ensure that they can survive off of that money. So for instance, if you self-funded, what you get from NSFAS is about 300, and that's for toiletries. And that doesn't even make sense because students, yes, as much as most of our money goes to food, but certain students need to, they need their toiletries, of course, and certain students would have to send money back home. So NSFAS isn't necessarily what we were promised. It isn't what the Fees Must Fall generation fought for. So I think we need to embark on a very aggressive fight against the Department of Higher Education and the GNU as the youth.
Yeah.
Because they're just simply not delivering. And we're not shocked they're not delivering.
Yeah. And what I like about your manifesto ahead of the 2024 SRC, 2024-2025 elections is the fact that you care enough about the student. When we look at the NFSA's direct payment system, which will, obviously address issues of late payment and all of that. If perhaps you can just unpack your manifesto, particularly when we look at the issues of NFSAs.
So with the direct payments, and I think this is just the EFF stance, we reject direct payments and we do not want them. Because why would you create a middleman? Because now you're creating a system where money goes to the private sector and the department is complicit, right? And they also possibly getting money from those service providers that they've put forth. Because I think when you have institutions that are managing the disbursement of allowances, it's better because I can go to Fees office and say, they are late, students haven't received their allowances. But if it's Tenet, if it's Izaga, where do I even start? You call these people, you'll wait in line for hours and you don't get anyone to assist you. So it's better when it's the institutions that are the ones that are disbursing funds and so forth, because I have direct access to FAS. So I can go to Fees office, students haven't received their allowances, something must happen. And I think that's what we've seen. So for instance, if you compare last year and now, students are happy with the system currently because that's the system we are used to. So the institution will then give you your money at the end of the month.
Yeah.
And last year, you'd wait like 2 weeks after a month end, and there's no sign of you getting your allowance. So that's how we feel about direct payments. And I know that it's currently in court, and these service providers have won the case against DHET. But we just reject them. Even if it would go to court again, I would want to see that direct payments don't continue because it simply doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
to have a
and
middleman
I
for
think that
something
move will
works.
also nip corruption in the bud
Exactly.
because there won't be any middleman, there won't be
Yes.
any tenders issued.
Yes.
And that has always been the EFF's position to say abolish tenders. Pay a student directly.
Yes, build internal capacity. Because when you have internal capacity, you're saving more money and you can give more to students. So like, for instance, if you have a financial provider, they have to think of, well, you need to pay me for actually giving these people funds. You need to pay me for cards. You need to pay me for just the service of ensuring that I take this money from this account and I take it to these different accounts. And that builds corruption, that encourages corruption, right? And also, if already there is internal capacity within universities, why would you then need to bring someone else from outside when already we have internal capacity?
Yeah.
Maybe for institutions that don't have internal capacity, build that internal capacity because it makes sense. Because students have easy access to their fees office, they have easy access to their management, as opposed to some financial service provider that I don't even know where their offices are. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So just build internal capacity and use that internal capacity because you get more and students get more. And it's just a good service. Yeah.
As an outgoing leader of the student adverts, what is the legacy that you're leaving? What are some of the achievements that you've made?
Well, the legacy, I think, I like how just generally the student command, without even us even speaking about it, is thinking towards the same direction. Because our SRC is also looking at establishing an annuity fund that would ensure that, for instance, students can benefit from that annuity fund through its interest and so forth. So this is for students that at the beginning of the year can't register for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So getting investments into that fund and ensuring that throughout the years, the SRC in itself can achieve its own financial sustainability.
Sure.
And we don't necessarily always have to depend on people to fundraise for us or give us money at the beginning of the year. So we're building our own internal capacity to ensure that even in like 10 years from now, the students that would like benefit from that particular fund.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. Secondly, also just establishing or getting housing. I think housing in Johannesburg is a huge issue. Housing in South Africa in general is a very huge issue because generally Black people don't have land and therefore we don't have housing. So it's a very important legacy that we're leaving behind because already this year we had already started with trying to source beds for students that they wouldn't have to pay for the rest of the year. So it's free accommodation. And this year we managed to get about 700 beds for students. And I think next year we have to bring that up because 700, as much as it seems as if it's a lot, in a population of 41,000 students, it's not even 10%. So it's very important to also establish that and make sure that we bring up those number of beds because there's a lot of students that are in need of accommodation and are in need, of course, of financial support. The other thing that I think just affects the majority of campuses in South Africa is food insecurity. Because, for instance, if you come from a village in the Eastern Cape, for instance, and your parents have children that they need to provide for, some of the time they might not be able to provide for you in Johannesburg. And most of the time students are left off to fend for themselves. So it's also the SRC's duty to ensure that we have food security on our campuses. And the one thing that the SRC has done, so at Wits we have the WCCO, and the WCCO is a place where like students get served food. So they get served food every lunch, every dinner as well. So they just line up, they get food free of charge. And we've also tried to build on this and to ensure there's also breakfast provided. And the dinner wasn't always provided like throughout the week. So we've also implemented that there's a couple of meals for supper as well. And there's a couple of meals for breakfast. So of course, building on this and making sure it's more sustainable and it's more permanent are things that I think we need to achieve. So it's those major three. So it's food security, it's financial sustainability, and also providing adequate housing for students. Period poverty affects literally each and every institution in South Africa. And what we have done to make it more sustainable is that firstly, last year, the SRC had provided dispensaries, right? So in female bathrooms and in gender-neutral bathrooms, you had pad dispensaries where students can go fetch pads and stuff like that. But that system it had a lot of loopholes because you'd get that people would just take the whole pack and they wouldn't necessarily leave anything for anyone. So what we've implemented now to make sure that it's more accessible for students and students can get the sanitary pads at any point is that the SRC in itself, our offices, have become dispensaries for pads. So if students need pads, they come to SRC offices and they can get them. And in addition to that, we've been working also with the WCCO to ensure that the WCCO is the one that's also giving students pads. So if they come, maybe they're collecting groceries, for instance, at the WCCO, because there's also grocery packs that the WCCO gives. They can also get a pad within their grocery packs. So we're also trying to also build on that and ensure that we give out toiletries. So we've started with that, but it's also just a thing of you always need to fundraise and you always need to get these funds for these things. But I think just building our own financial sustainability will take us very far because that's what you need. You need finances, you need money in order for you to provide services for people. So it's just about sustainability and not necessarily just doing it for this one term, but to ensure other SRCs after you aren't necessarily going to have to start from scratch and are going to already have the things that you had implemented.
Yeah. And with the competition getting really a bit tougher, the battlefield now has a lot of contestation.
Sure.
We have the likes of other political student movements that are vying for power. Why should the students of Wits vote for the EFF Student Command?
I mean, I think it's really obvious. I think the only people on campus that are militant, the only people on campus that are visible, the only people on campus that you can rely on are fighters, the EFF Students Command. And I think it's possibly a fallacy to say that we have competition. I don't think we have competition.
I retract, President. There's no competition.
I don't think we have competition.
Yeah.
I think we just have people that want to take chances.
Yeah.
And when they get into governance, they don't necessarily understand what they need to be doing.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the fact that students gave us a chance last year, I think we've proven ourselves, and we've proved that if you give us another second term, we'll surpass your whatever you think we can achieve, and we can do much more than what you say we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
EFF Student Command first and second to none.
Yeah, there's nothing else. I don't see them.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the EFF Student Command has embarked on 100,000 membership campaign.
Yes.
How is the drive going? Are you meeting your targets?
I think the drive's going really well because we are doing, well, of course, when we're doing the groundwork, motong, campaigning for SRC, we're also getting people that want to sign membership and so forth. So we doing the campaigns concurrently. So you have the recruitment drive and also the campaign in itself. And it's going well. We have good reception on campus. And I think also just generally with the local government elections and how much we were able to prove that EFF is Wits, Wits is EFF, right?
Sure.
So for instance, I think we had the highest voter turnout at Wits this year for the national elections. And our voter turnouts were sitting, I think, at 54%, and that's the highest.
Yeah.
And the EFF got around 80-something% of the votes of people that voted at Wits. And at Wits, we have two voting stations, one at Parktown, one on main campus. And we won both of those with an overwhelming majority. So there's a lot of students that love the EFF that want to be members.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And
we haven't met our target yet.
Sure.
However, we're working towards it.
but you're coming all right.
Yes.
Yeah, I want us to do a bit of a post-mortem looking at the 2024 general elections, the EFF performance
Sure.
thereof, and the contribution made by the EFF SC. How do you gauge the contribution made by the EFF Student Command towards the mother body? Its support, unfortunately, we dropped to 9%. What are some of the challenges that perhaps could have led to, the EFF dropping with the EFF Student Command, winning majority of the campuses, institutions of higher learning?
I think that when you look at the vote and when you look at how young people voted, just generally in the country, one can tell that young people love the EFF, right? The EFF is a political party for young people, right? And I think that's amazing. I genuinely think the EFF did well in these elections. Of course, we dropped, but I think our constituency was very clear that our constituency is young people, right?
Sure.
And I think most of the time, what you have with the command, and I understand that the command is established for higher institutions of learning, of course, is that there's a majority of young people that aren't in TVETs and aren't in universities, and they're at home and all of that. And possibly reaching out to those young people is possibly something that would help the EFF improve on our numbers, because we've established the EFF is for young people. Young people love the EFF. So we just need to go find young people. We need to do things that inspire young people to be a part of the EFF, address their issues, address issues of unemployment, address issues of education, right? Because those are our constituency. As CIC said, we must take care of people that take care of us.
Yeah,
We must take
true,
care of
true.
young people,
Yeah.
because those are the people that will vote for the EFF. And of course, there was a wild card in the election, something that none of us expected, which is MK. But I don't think MK has a long future. I really don't, because I think MK is formed on Zulu nationalism, which is not a sustainable idea.
Yeah.
There's no politics in that. It's just, I like this person because they're popular right now. And there's no necessarily any policies. There's no politics.
There's no longevity.
There's no longevity. I don't see it.
Yeah.
So possibly in the next national elections,
Yeah.
we won't have MK, or it won't be as big as what it is right now.
Yeah.
But I think for us to actually stay above the curve and for us to actually improve on our numbers, let's focus on our constituency.
Sure.
And when you look at South Africa, majority of people that are in South Africa are young people. And if we can focus on our constituency, which is young people,
Yeah.
we'll have voters for life, and you'll have.
And yeah, with this campaign of 100 membership, I think it's a step towards
Yes,
the right
definitely.
direction.
Definitely.
Yeah. I want us to look at the Sizofuna Ngenkani campaign at
Sure.
Wits, Comrade President.
Yes.
How has that assisted the students?
I think, as you had mentioned, right, so higher institutions of learning, especially like historically white higher institutions of learning, are always seen to be for the rich and people that have money, people that can afford those fees and all of that. And I think the importance of Sifuna Nkani, and this is just something, or the essence rather, of Fees Must Fall, was simply access. Give access to people that don't necessarily have the money to pay, because I mean, the economics of South Africa and just generally the inequality of South Africa is a product of apartheid, right? And you can't necessarily then say we're going to start on a clean slate and everyone must just prove themselves. You need to ensure that you have affirmative action and ensure that people that are from under-resourced areas are given preference. They're given an opportunity to inhibit these spaces and make their lives better and make the lives of their families better. So I think that's why the Sifuna Nkani campaign is important.
Yeah.
And what you see at Wits is that you have students, for instance, that come from like very under-resourced schools that will achieve distinctions, like 7, 8 distinctions. And the university will then say these students can't then enter because they simply didn't complete a application. And that in itself is very exclusionary, because how can you then ensure that this person had access to electronic devices, they have access to data, they have access to Wi-Fi? Because of the schools they come from, we as the EFF Student Command need to ensure that they have access to education because they've proved themselves. The university says if you get your marks, if you get the correct marks, you should be able to enter. But then there's certain implicit ways that institutions exclude people, and they don't necessarily make it very explicit. They won't say, because you can't pay for this, you can't enter. They'll say, oh no, but we require you to pay a registration fee. We require you to have funding. We require this, that, and the other. And all of these are implicit ways that these institutions exclude Black people. So it's very important to have the Sifuna Nkani campaign, and that's what we've seen during these years and throughout the years, that we ensure that people that haven't applied to even enter those institutions and have the marks to enter do enter, because what then is the excuse for them not entering? They've qualified. They've done everything that you said they must do. So they must definitely enter. And above that, ensuring that they have accommodation, because as I've said, in South Africa, Black people don't own land. So for instance, if in Suga, Eastern Cape, and all of my family lives in the Eastern Cape, and I want to study at Wits, I don't know anyone in Johannesburg. I need to be given a place to stay because I don't know anyone in Johannesburg, and it's the institution's responsibility to ensure that their students are safe and their students have conducive learning environments, right? So that's the importance of Sifuna Nkani campaign, and that's also just generally its legacy. That's what it's done throughout the years, ensure that students have access, students from under-resourced and disadvantaged backgrounds are able to get access, and that's very important.
Yeah. And you are undoubtedly loyal fighters on the ground.
course.
What do you have to say about the remarks made by the former leader of the EFF Student Command, Mpho Morelane, who takes a platform to go against the EFF policies? He suggests that, well, he claims that almost 90% of the fighters on the ground do not believe in the EFF immigration policy. I thought maybe he's hallucinating at some point, but what do you have to say about that?
No, I think he's definitely hallucinating.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think he's definitely hallucinating because I think the open border policy, right, is mostly understood by fighters on the ground that are students, by fighters that he apparently led as a constituency. So, for instance, if, you go to any institution of higher learning and you'd ask a fighter to clarify the open border policy of the EFF, they'll clarify it and you'll understand. You'll be like, oh, no, that makes sense. Like, of course that makes sense, right? And I think you need to, politics are they're very difficult because you'll have people. You'll literally have people that have never been or haven't been in the space for plus 5 years, right? And then try to suggest things about what's happening on the ground
relevant
when they haven't been on the ground. The only time that I've seen that man was this. It was during this year, and I wasn't even sure. Wait, was this the former president? Because I genuinely don't know that man. I think this is. I think my experience of him is possibly the experience of many fighters on the ground. We don't know that man. Even
I
the
didn't know him until
organization
he resigned.
Exactly. Even the organization doesn't
resigned.
know him. He doesn't have
Yeah.
membership. So it's just people that formerly had positions in the EFF that would want to now come back and say, yeah, no, I've been a member. I know what's happening. And they don't know anything.
Yeah.
They're just delusional. I think he's suffering from delusions, that man.
Yeah.
Let's go get
I
checked.
saw a post, someone saying he's politically kanyimbao. Now, let's move to analyze the GNU. How do you see the function of NFSAS under the GNU panning out, President? Do you see any improvement at all under this so-called GNU, which is apparently the ANC and DA coalition?
I literally have no confidence in the governments of the GNU because if you look at, for instance, the policies that the DA wants to implement and their stance on education, the DA really doesn't care about black people. It doesn't. So anything and everything that it will do will be for the rich and the whites, right? So NSFAS in itself is a conduit that would, or is supposed to rather, allow students that come from disadvantaged and underserviced backgrounds to get access to education and therefore just generally improving their lives and the lives of their families. And what I see with NSFAS, and I think it has already started, is the conversion of NSFAS to a loan again. Because, for instance, NSFAS right now is providing the missing middle to be a loan. They're saying you can apply with us, we'll loan you the money, and then once you start working, you'll pay it back to us. And that's what I see happening under the GNU. I don't see NSFAS becoming whatever the bursary it is right now. I just see it getting worse. In that we'll go back, and people will have to sign contracts that when I'm done studying, I'll pay back NSFAS, which is literally a reverse, a 180 from what the Fees Must Fall generation tried to achieve.
Yeah.
So I don't have any confidence in the GNU at all.
Yeah. And just prior the elections, I think the NFSAS has returned almost 580 million to National Treasury. How has that affected the students in particular?
You see, that money was supposed to be used for elections, but because we're being led by fools, they couldn't even use it for elections. Now it's just money that's chilling in NSFAS coffers. They don't know what to do with it. They're sending it back to Treasury, which doesn't make sense. If you look at the amounts of NSFAS students that have been defunded by NSFAS, and those students need that money. Those students need to be paying for their fees. And it doesn't make sense for you to take out money from a department that needs the money and then just take it straight to NSFAS. I remember I had a conversation with the current deputy minister of NSFAS on a radio station, and they were just talking a whole lot of nothing about why they had to return the money. And he didn't just get to the point of NSFAS students are defunded. NSFAS students, some of them don't even get their allowances. You haven't paid every university NSFAS fund. So how does that then make sense for you to take back the money and take it back to Treasury? So the ANC government, the GNU government, Hi guys, Mayaz.
Yeah.
No.
Now you're gearing up for the elections next week. How is the mood on the ground? Do you get the sense that you're going for a third term? And are you coming back or not?
I'm personally not coming back, but the EFF is definitely coming back. But I think it's very important to always be anxious about your competitor or your opponent. And I think that's how you win elections. You don't win elections with arrogance. You need to actually be on the ground. You need to do what they're not doing and do it better. Everything they do, you must do better. So it's very important to be on the ground because that's how you win elections. You don't win elections by, well, social media plays a part, of course, but you don't win elections by being the loudest. You don't win elections by singing. You win elections by convincing students. You win elections by going to students. And that's what the EFF is doing currently. And with how the mood is on the ground, it's really inspiring, and how fighters are dedicated and how disciplined they are. It's very inspiring, and I do see us having a second term. But it's very important to also be cognizant that there's people that are fighting as well on their side, and you just need to do it better and be the better candidate. Yeah.
So what can we expect from you in the foreseeable future? And currently, what are you studying at Wits?
Oh, I'm doing my master's in GIS and remote sensing. So I'm trying to focus on my career next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All the best. All the best. Particularly on the issues of ensuring that the EFF Student Command remains the only hope and vehicle that will usher economic freedom through winning elections and ensuring that there is no SASCO, there is no MK that is going to come anywhere closer to the EFF Student Command.
Yeah, I think generally, as I've said, the youth of South Africa are very conscious of course, the problems we have, and therefore who exactly is the enemy of progress, like who's not allowing us to achieve the things we want to achieve. So as he said, like investing in political education, investing in educating people about the policies of the EFF, because half of the time when someone doesn't want the open border policy, it's just a lack of understanding. And if you make them understand and you actually put it in simple terms and you break it down in terms of how it's going to be applied, one can see that, okay, this policy makes sense economically. It also just makes sense for the unity of African people. So I think definitely political education is something that we should definitely be aggressive about, because even when you look at the EFF Student Command and the environment it exists in high institutions of learning where we're always learning and we're always looking at other forms of knowledge, improving our forms of knowledge, and possibly adopting new ways of knowledge and how to teach and also receive knowledge just in general. So it's very important for us to, at the same time, teach young people our own policies, where we stand, our ideological standpoints, and so forth. Because what you have is that education in South Africa, whether we like it or not, is political. What we learn in our classes is very political. The fact that we taught about markets and we taught that your degree is supposed to ensure that we continue with capitalism in itself is political. So you need to ensure that you invest in political education and provide students an alternative. And that's what the EFF is. And that's why so many young people believe in the EFF, but we just need to intensify so that even these other young people that are just simply members and aren't necessarily committed members can then go into their communities, also teach their parents, teach their communities about what actually the EFF is about. Because media plays a huge role in terms of decampaigning the EFF, make it seem as if we're not progressive.
In fact, it's a tool of the white monopoly capital.
Of course. So we need to build in ourselves and also the spaces that we inhibit for other people to be agents for the movement that will enrich their communities with the knowledge and spread the good word of economic freedom.
And we are in December hosting the NPA. What are you looking forward to? What kind of leadership do you think? In fact, I think you're going to be part. What sort of leadership do you think should lead the movement going forward? We have learned a lot from the CIC, and they spoke about continuity and consistency.
Yes.
And obviously to guard against sellouts and people who do not understand the revolution to the
Sure.
core, or the ideology of the EFF. What kind of leadership do you think should be elected come the NPA in December?
I think the EFF in itself already, has the type of leadership I want. It's youthful. It's young people. You don't have people that are sleeping in parliament. You don't have people that are part of the...
You don't have sleepies.
You don't have that.
Yeah.
You don't have people part of the CCT that are just questionable, right? So I think a youthful leadership is something that I'm looking forward to, because I think that's what South Africa needs. We need young people, because young people are innovative. Young people think about the world differently. We are miles ahead from our parents. I think what I think of the world in 20 years from now, my parents can't simply imagine. So I think young people definitely need to be at the forefront. I think women need to be at the forefront. And the reason why I say women, because women bring a certain nuanced experience within the political space, because politics just generally are inherently very male-dominated and very masculine. So it's very important to have women's voices in the space and have femininity thrive in the space, because I think there's so much that women contribute. And when you can tell, man, when something's led by a man and when something's led by a woman. And also just generally intersectionality, having the LGBTQIA plus community also have expression is something that's very important for me. And also just have professionals, man. Because, I mean, the EFF encourages education, and we already have those professionals. You have people that have political insights or political... that are literally... we say we are the midwife of politics in South Africa. We the ones that shape narrative. So you need to, of course, include education in that. So, but generally, I'm really happy with the direction that we take in terms of our deployment, in terms of who exactly leads us already. But I think so much more could be done.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we take inspiration from your leadership as a female.
Thank
I
you.
mean, you have championed the likes of the SRC fund adverts, the issues of NFC's direct payments. So
Yes.
that speaks to the capability, the
woman.
capacity.
Yes.
So you do have the capacity. We trust in you. We trust in
Thank
women
you.
leadership
Thank
in
you.
the EFF.
Of course.
Yeah. And as a parting shot, President, all the best
Thank you.
on your electioneering ahead of the elections next week. And we hope you're going to secure this one. It's in the back already. I can see the smile. Yeah. Any last word you would wish to convey to the fighters?
Well, firstly, let's stay disciplined. Let's stay loyal to the organization, of course. And let's ensure, man, that we take all the institutions again this year. And just to students generally, Tata le ndayinabungozi.
Yeah, and I'm going to
Yes.
say Tata. So, the song of the day, President, as we usher in the EFF
Yes.
SC in the upcoming elections. What is that song that you'd want the fighters to dance to?
The first song that came up to my head is from the recent just our album, which is Vumagamnandi. Students and fighters and just generally everyone in South Africa. Mas Vumagamnandi, the message of economic
Vumagamnandi.
yes,
Yeah.
emancipation.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for coming through, and all the best in your studies
Thank you.
and in your political work as well. Thank you very much, people of South Africa, Africa, and the world for tuning in. Please do not forget to subscribe. And now, don't forget, the details are on the screen. Please renew your membership as a loyal member of the Economic Freedom Fighters. The EFF membership is only valid for 2 years, okay? And we renew just like that. We are going to renew ours, renew yours as well. So thank you very much, people of South Africa, for tuning in. My name is Titus Tsungurko Zaramsengo Natwaleka. Emavula kuvaliwe. Kensil.
Amafighter fikile kweli shumi fighter nditivu magamnande Amafighter fikile kweli shumi fighter nditivu magamnande